Let's talk Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's press conference at the Combine. Welcome back to Onebar and Lupagus show. I am Lupagus. I'm a little sweaty because I just was stuck in a snowbank. Anyway, I'm free, and we're going to talk about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's press conference at the Combine. Some takeaways from that. Before we hop in that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the vids. Definitely hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 8,900 subscribers on the precipice of 9K. All right, let's talk about Kwesi and his press conference at the Combine. A couple things to take away here. Not a ton, but there's a few talkers. Number one, he talked Brian Flores. He said he's a perfect fit for the culture with his energy. He talked about how he's had good defenses with young players, which I thought was very interesting. I do think this defense especially is going to make a youth movement. So the fact he actually made a point to say that says a lot about the direction this defense may be headed. And then he talked about Flores' personnel mind, how he's got a background in personnel decisions, picking players, and reshaping this roster with young talent that he can identify. So definitely Kwesi is very, very, very high on our new defensive coordinator. He was asked about trades in the division. He said, well, he doesn't like making opponents better. It's about putting the best team together that can get you to the playoffs, which is what he was doing with the TJ Hawkinson deal. So he didn't care that Detroit was getting a draft pick now. He wanted Hawkinson, made the team better, and it got us to the playoffs. So again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. And he was pretty willing to admit that. He was actually asked, this is kind of interesting, just kind of some behind the scenes GM speak here. Makes you always wonder what the process is like, what the talks are like behind the scenes. He said, talked about getting good info versus bad info on prospects. He said if 80% is pointing one way, then that's probably the right way. He also talked about, weighing 3 years of film against one snap at the Senior Bowl, which one holds more weight. So that was kind of interesting to hear him talk about that, maybe getting inside feel of how these GMs are grading and evaluating talent. He talked about, so I think this is the hottest talker. You've seen this one all over Twitter. Kirk Cousins. He's talking about, what's the threshold of a quarterback? You want to have a good quarterback who can win you games. And then you want to build around that quarterback, and then making your team better that way. And he said, Cousins meets that threshold. He's a good quarterback. So some people just, well, it's not a ringing endorsement. Well, he set the standard, what he wants in a quarterback. He said Kirk Cousins meets that. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The thing I did think was interesting, though, he said it's about how long he can keep that threshold. So that, to me, was a little bit interesting. Does that mean they're going to extend him 3 years? Do they think he can keep that threshold for 3 more years? Do they think it's only one more season? That, to me, was the interesting point, was him. How long can he keep that threshold? But definitely he thinks Kirk Cousins is a quarterback they can build around and win with. He made that clear. He was asked about Delvin, and the guy just asked him about Delvin. Kwesi actually said, which Delvin? Obviously, the guy was talking about Delvin Cook, but he said Delvin Cook's a great player and a leader. He did also mention the salary cap a little bit later in that sentence. So while he was praising heap on Delvin Cook, he also mentioned, well, there's things that we have to do with the salary cap a little bit later. So definitely you can read into that a little bit, that maybe they are looking at potentially moving him to save up some cap space. But then later, Delvin came up again, and he just said how much he loves him. So I'm sure if Kwesi does have to move on from Delvin Cook, it will hurt his heartstrings. But you got to do what's right for the team. He was asked about Justin Jefferson. He said he doesn't want to be the GM without him on this team, which is probably the highest praise a player can get from a general manager. He said it's a high priority to get him extended. And he's talked about how Jefferson isn't afraid to go up against double teams or defenses that are designed to stop him. He puts his team on his back. And he says, when you have a guy like that in your building, you do whatever you can to not let him out. So anybody was concerned Justin Jefferson's not going to be here for the long term, Kwesi pretty much put a kibosh on that with the heapings of praise he dumped on him in this press conference. A couple of other quick talkers. He was asked about linebacker. And the guys Kwesi brought up were Brian Asamoah, Troy Dye, and William Quinku. Didn't say anything about the old guys. He said they have decisions to make. They're just like any other position. But he didn't talk about making decisions at any other position. It was just that linebacker spot. So with what they said earlier about the youth movement, mentioning the young guys, doesn't look good for Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks to be around for the 2023 season. then he was talking, he was asked about evaluating free agency and the draft. He said basically what it comes down to is you're dealing with the known in the free agencies, and then you're dealing with the unknown in the draft prospects. So he said that's kind of what you're weighing against there. So that was kind of interesting to hear him say that. And it's true. I mean, obviously, you know what you get with a lot of these free agents. With these rookies, you're hoping not only what they've been in college, but what they can become. You're trying to project forward. So that was interesting. So overall, a pretty good, press conference. Nothing earth-shattering, but some insight on the way GMs think. And definitely he showed his hand on how he feels about Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, Delvin Cook, and the Vikings linebacking situation, and Brian Flores. So I think Kevin O'Connell is up at the podium tomorrow. We'll also break down what he has to say. But other than that, guys, let me know what you think in the comments of Kwesi's press conference. Let me know if you're excited about the combine, who you're excited to watch, and always keep your skull in your